This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. We all have moments that redefine what's possible. For Claire Gott, it meant saying yes to one trip that would change everything. Claire grew up shy but competitive, found her spark on a netball court, and then on a school trip to Tanzania realised she wanted a career where she could make a real difference. That decision led her to co-found a charity in Cameroon that 15 years later is still delivering schools, medical centres and clean water. By 25, she's been awarded an MBE by the then Prince Charles. Today, she's the UK Head of Structures at WSP, leading hundreds of engineers on some of the most complex projects in the country. In this conversation, Claire reflects on her sliding door moments, the setbacks that became turning points, and what it really takes to lead with ambition and resilience. This is Claire's story, and it shows just how much one person can shape.
Ready? Okay, let's take it from the top.
Claire, hi. Welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
You're WSP's UK Head of Structure. Can you tell me briefly what that entails?
Yeah, so it's a team of about 500 engineers and technicians across about 20 different sectors. So for me, the brilliant part of my role is that I get to be involved in driving strategy, technical excellence, but also, most importantly, with our people and our clients on our projects. So a really interesting role, and I've been in it for a year and a half now.
Amazing, thank you. What were you like as a little girl?
Oh, as a little girl, fairly shy actually, and that was definitely something that changed as I got older. But as a little girl, quite shy, quite interested in culture and people and places. That definitely set the tone for my career to date. And interestingly, I wanted to be a hairdresser when I was about 6 or 7.
Did you?
That's where I, saw myself getting to know people and being engaged in their conversation in their lives. So, yeah.
So what happened, what changed that took you from hairdressing into what you do now?
Well, at about the age of, I'd say, 10, 11, 12, sport entered my life in a big way. And that's where I became a little bit more competitive. Sitting on the sides of a netball court, not being picked, got a bit tiresome. So that's where my competitive edge came in. And a bit of encouragement from my dad as well, to get more stuck into sport. We're quite a sporty family. And that's really stuck with me, actually, in always, trying to be part of a team, especially in a sporting environment, but also wanting to do your best.
What sports were you playing apart from netball?
I loved rowing. So I did a lot of rowing, cross country. And so they were probably my 3 key sports as a child. And that moved into adulthood as well. But I now really love strength training. That gives me a real kind of buzz, helps me feel strong, and gives me a bit of confidence. So.
And what academic subjects were you enjoying at the time?
I loved maths and physics and design technology, stuff that, I could practically get involved with, and I could see how what I was working through in my brain would result in something in real life. So they were the subjects that I took all the way through to A-level. But I also loved geography as well, learning about, as I said, different cultures, different people, different places, exploring the world and what's happened in different parts of the world.
And you were involved in Young Enterprise?
I was, yes. We had a team called Aspire, and we did build, actually, quite interestingly, we went to studios to record our very own children's book, and that was really good fun, and another way to resonate with the next generation.
Can you just explain a little bit about what Young Enterprise is?
Okay, so Young Enterprise is a school-based initiative, a programme that students are encouraged to basically set up their own business and get a feel for what it's like to be a bit more entrepreneurial, come forward with ideas, set forward a business plan, put that into practice, deliver a product, take that to market, and you hold competitions around the country to see who's done that the best each year. And it was really nice to be invited to go back and see how they were doing a few years ago as an alumni, and it's still going, it's still doing really well.
Did you ever think about doing a business-related degree?
It didn't really come forward as an area that I personally wanted to invest all my time in. But I think also I was largely influenced by my dad, who is also an engineer. And also the subjects that I was studying really lent themselves to more of an engineering mindset, I guess. And it just seemed like the logical next step. But the other aspect that, really changed my view on my future career was I took a school trip to Tanzania, and we helped to rebuild an orphanage alongside the climb of Mount Kilimanjaro, which was amazing. And actually, it was that element, rebuilding that orphanage. I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to make a difference. I want a career where I can make a real difference, even in a small way. And engineering would enable that. And so that's really where it all began in terms of starting that career pathway.
So what did your dad do?
So he was more really in kind of systems engineering, and he actually studied at MIT, so incredibly successful. And I wanted to detach myself a little bit from doing exactly what my dad had done. So I was adamant I wasn't going down that route. And, civil engineering and architecture felt like a way that I could express myself, but also, bring in the more creative side and give enough flexibility to have a career where I could work across lots of different sectors.
That's why you brought the architecture piece in as well.
Yeah, and I also couldn't decide. So I left my options open a little bit.
Okay.
And I did go on to get my Part 1 in architecture as well as my chartership in civils, because I just felt that actually being able to demonstrate that you could work with different disciplines in different ways and have a more holistic approach, would provide a bit of a competitive edge. So,
do you think there were some leadership skills that you learn at school, captaining the netball team, the young enterprise, that have shaped the leader that you are today?
Definitely. And I think not only was it at school, it was actually at university as well. So in my final year at university, with that trip to Tanzania in the back of my mind, I, with a fellow student, co-founded a charity in Cameroon. And the ultimate goal was to help with an existing orphanage out there and give them the facilities that they desperately needed. 15 years later, the charity is still going strong. We're delivering medical centres, schools, solar power, clean drinking water. We've helped about 20,000 local people out in Cameroon. And the leadership skills that I learned through that journey of setting up a charity, running a team, that team changing every year, moving from it being my vision to it then moving into a trustee role, the leadership required just in juggling all of that, but also taking people on that journey, that's really stood me in good stead for my career, definitely.
You very sort of flippantly said, I set up a charity in my third year at university. How did that come about?
I knew I wanted to make a difference. I knew that if I didn't do something in my last year, I'd get stuck in the world of work, and, that might never come to fruition. And also, quite by chance, one of my lecturers, my architecture lecturer, was at church with a Cameroonian whose mum was trying desperately to run this orphanage out in Cameroon.
Okay.
And I think not everyone believes in fate, but for me, this was a sliding doors moment. This was an incredible opportunity to make a real difference. And when we went out there to see, just how difficult it was, that was it. We wanted to help in any way that we could. And our first project was to design and fundraise for a medical centre where those orphans had, the medical support that they needed. And yeah, as a group of 15 students by that point that we'd pulled together. We raised £50,000 over 6 months. We designed that medical centre and then delivered it within the year.
How did you raise the money to go to Cameroon and visit in the first place, before you'd started the fundraising?
We really did that out of our own pocket. Just a flight, a small bag, and out with one of the locals to go and see and check out, what this was really about before we really immersed ourselves into such a big scale project. And we were welcomed with open arms. They were so happy to, have us involved and seeing what it was like firsthand for them. And then, the real fundraising effort kicked in once the project started.
So that's kind of the setting up the charity is a real sliding door moment. What did it teach you about possibility and collaboration and grit?
I think one of the most challenging parts was really bringing together a group of students that I didn't know that well, who needed to get on board quite quickly with what we were trying to deliver, and to try and really turn what was arguably my vision into something that everybody wanted to partake in and could see how they would contribute and make a difference. And as is always the case on big projects, you have people with different personalities, different skills, different strengths. And so really trying to bring the best out of each individual was something I learned really early on. In terms of the grit aspect, I am someone who, if I commit to doing something, I will do it. And having committed to local individuals, we were absolutely going to get it over the line.
And how do you mentioned different personalities within a team. So you're now running a very large team, and you had a team of people then. How do you figure out the different personalities within the team?
So I don't think there's anything more powerful than getting to know the individual themselves. And so a huge amount of my time is spent with our people. And I'm a massive advocate for being a mentor as well internally within the business. And actually going to our different offices, we're spread across 12 to 15 different offices in the UK. And making sure that we're visible, we're approachable as a leadership team, and that people feel they can come to me with their concerns. And we have what's called a WSP Listen survey, which really helps with that. That enables me to access feedback from all 500 team members pretty quickly and pretty effectively. Otherwise, I'd be spreading myself very thin. And also, I think having a really strong and supportive leadership team around you that also have the same ethos of being a people-led business is really important too.
As an undergrad, you found yourself in at the deep end tell me about the sewage treatment works.
So my first ever summer placement, my first kind of real involvement in the civil engineering industry. And it was the height of the recession, so there weren't a huge number of projects. So I was very grateful to have a placement. I was told it was a water treatment reservoir. And I arrived on my first day and it clearly was not. It was sewage treatment works, and I was the only person there. I was staying away from home. I was the only female. I was the only student. So it was a real shock to the system, and a bit of a moment of, can I really do this? Bit of imposter syndrome, really.
Yeah.
But again, being the person that if I commit to something, I'm going to do it, I did stick with it. But it was the height of the flooding as well. So coming home smelling every day was quite an interesting experience.
And what did your role entail? What did you have to do every day?
For the most part, I was really learning what it was like to work on a project like that, overseeing a lot of the civils works around piling, making sure that the expansion of the sewage treatment works was on programme, on track. So really engaging with the groundworks team day to day.
And how was it being the only woman on that project?
It was hard. They didn't even have female toilets when I arrived. So, it was quite challenging. And as an 18-year-old in that kind of environment, it was quite daunting.
So this is first summer, first year.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you deal with it?
I confided in my peers who were also on summer placements. I confided in friends and colleagues as well on the project. But really, I just took it day by day. Tried to understand and make the most of being on quite a significant project. And also, being in a different part of the country and making the most of exploring what was happening in that particular market and that region.
Do you think you were treated differently as a woman as if you'd been a male student?
I think that's really hard to answer because I don't know how I would have been treated if I was a male student. Everyone was respectful, everyone was polite, and I definitely felt that though I was welcomed. I would imagine it was probably preconceptions that I had of an environment like that probably impacted me more, to be honest.
Many of your classmates from university went into banking. Did you ever consider that path?
I didn't, no. And I think possibly because I didn't see much beyond the skills that I, thought I had that were good, and also wanting to go and make a difference. That didn't really align with going into banking in my mind. But there was a moment, I think, once I'd graduated where I could see all my, former student friends going off and earning huge amounts of money in a different sector and a very different work life. But I'm very fortunate that I really enjoy what I do. And I think I'm quite good at what I do, which means that I feel like I can make the difference, which is what I set out to do. Yeah.
So after university, what was your first role?
So I actually joined WSP straight out of university as a graduate structural engineer. I was working on Alder Hey Hospital, and I think what really resonated with me even as a graduate was being able to see the small changes that we could make in the design process to make a huge difference to people's lives. The hospital was ultimately designed by patients, and just by lowering the height of the windows, it meant that the children could see out whilst they were in the hospital beds, and that made a huge impact on their day-to-day life. And every room had a window, and so small changes really do have an impact. Yeah.
So how long were you in that role for?
As a graduate structural engineer, probably in a year or so. But on that particular project, I worked on lots of other projects as well. And then I felt like I really wanted to use my architecture at the same time. So I'd got that qualification by that point, and I thought, my skills, I think, are a bit more aligned to the people aspect. I'd like to be more involved with the client, with the architect. And we were working on London Bridge Station redevelopment project as a business at the time. And I got in touch with the project lead and asked if I could be part of that team. And I shadowed him for 6 months, and it was the best experience of my career, being able to see firsthand how he engaged all the different disciplines, how he had a holistic approach of the project delivery. And I just wish we would do more of that these days, because it really does show you everything you need to know in the role that you're doing, and set you up for that next step.
Amazing. So you've said that WSP's CEO, Mark, supported your passion projects. In what way did he support you?
So having set up the charity and seen quite a bit of success with Cameroon Catalyst, the charity, I was very honoured to receive an MBE from the then Prince Charles.
So there's a story. There's a couple of stories about the MBE.
There are,
You're my first
yeah.
MBE guest, so thank you. Can you tell me those stories?
So I wasn't really familiar with the MBE process, or didn't really have that much of an insight until they tried to get a hold of me and track me down. And
So you didn't know this was on the cards?
No, absolutely not. It's very hush hush, and that's part of why it's such an impressive process, is that no one really knows. You're not allowed to know who's nominated you. I wasn't even allowed to thank anybody because I didn't know who it was. But when they tried to speak to me to confirm that I wanted indeed to receive it, they couldn't get a hold of me. And they tried at work, they tried at home, they tried through friends, colleagues, couldn't get a hold of me. In the end, they did track me down at my boyfriend's house. Don't know how they got hold of that number.
Was this because you don't answer, undisclosed numbers, or you don't read your text messages, or you don't read your email? Like, how can this happen, Claire?
I didn't have a work phone at the time. I was too junior for that. And, I think in our place of work, if someone doesn't,
They won't give
who
out
they
your
are,
details.
they're not going to give out my details.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they did manage to track me down. They explained what it was.
How old were you at this time?
I was 25. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was more that when they tried to get a hold of me, I didn't really understand what they were asking. And I went along with it. I said, that's very exciting. Thank you so much. Yes, of course. And the first person I thought to ring to tell was my dad, because firstly I thought, he'd be proud, but also just to check what this process is all about. And his response was, oh, darling, I wouldn't get too excited. It's probably a prank.
Thanks, Dad.
So, I hadn't really thought of that. No, okay, yeah, you're probably right. So the whole being sworn to secrecy piece, I actually didn't tell anyone until it came out, because I was so worried it was actually a prank.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amazing. And then what happens, what's the process then, just in case,
Well, you wait until you get your invitation to be asked to the palace, and yes, you have your moment to walk up and receive your reward and meet one of the royal members of the family. So yeah, a very special moment.
And who presented your award?
It was Prince Charles. Yeah, so the now king. So yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, it's
what
lovely.
a moment. And only 25.
Yeah. So what was lovely is that Prince Charles has also done quite a lot of work in Africa, and so we had a quick 2-minute chat when he was presenting it. So that was really nice.
So after you got your MBE, how did you feel?
Firstly, shocked actually, and I think it was really a moment of pause and reflection of everything that we'd achieved through the charity, and it very much felt like this was recognition for everyone that was involved, not just me. That was something I was really keen to relay to the rest of the team. And then as I started to get the thank yous and well dones coming in, the pressure actually started to build a little bit around, okay, well you've got this great accolade, so what are you going to do with it? What's next? And that wasn't just from colleagues and those in industry, it's from family as well. And I would say I'm a fairly modest person in that I've found it very uncomfortable going out and shouting about that and talking about it. If someone asks me, I will talk about it, but putting that forward first makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. And so, the pressure to try and do more wasn't really in my comfort zone. I felt it was more of a recognition of what had been done to date, not necessarily what was next. I would like to think that, having continued the charity on into 15 years of delivery and success, that would speak to that. But I definitely felt the pressure as well.
Did you? Did you find out who nominated you?
No, you can't ever find out.
Never?
I will never know. No.
No ideas?
No, I
inklings?
tried. I tried because I wanted to say thank you, and I was told to stop asking.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, by the king.
Yeah, top secret.
He said, stop asking, Claire. Mark, WSP's CEO, was supportive of this?
Hugely supportive. I've not really made a huge amount of my MBE. It feels like it's recognition for the work that was done with Cameroon Catalyst, and some might say I should have done more with that. I've always struggled with shouting about things like that. But Mark was very good at saying off the back of receiving that recognition, he offered me a role in leading the corporate social responsibility for the UK business at WSP. And that meant I could really drive my passion for, humanitarian aid, volunteering work, our charity support, our social value. And I did that for 5 years across, at the time, about 7,000 colleagues.
Wow. So you were bringing almost your two passions into one.
Yeah.
Lovely. How did his belief in you change you, do you think?
I think it helped me see the importance of really supporting that next generation and taking the time to find a more tailored approach to each individual, really understanding what drives them, what their passions are, how you can enable that to continue to flourish. And I would like to think that I've tried to take that on with the people that I mentor now as well.
How are you about showing vulnerability at work?
For a long time, I found that really tough. Um, I I realised that that's how you connect with people. That's a really important part of bringing your whole self to work. But I think from certain experiences in my life, that has been quite challenging. I had a colleague who, you know, at work, very sadly passed away very young. And, she had always said to me, you've got to make sure you bring your full self to work, make sure work doesn't rule your life. And that really resonated with me, given she passed away so young. I also sadly lost my first child, Jacoby, when he was just 2 hours old.
Mm.
And that really affected how I was able to juggle work and life. And at that time, the only way I could function at work was to put a wall up. And so for a long time, it was really hard to show any vulnerability at work for fear of, breaking down in an inappropriate moment or with someone who wouldn't really understand. I'm starting to chip away at that now, 7 years on. And I really value being able to have, those really personal conversations with people, to understand that everybody is juggling something at some point in their lives, and to be able to be there for people when they need that. So I think showing a level of vulnerability is hugely important, and really leads to that more, emotionally intelligent approach to leadership.
Do you think having that continuity in the company that you've worked for throughout those two massive tragedies in your life has been helpful?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I think having people that I know I can go to and trust if I'm having a difficult day, or, I was on a particular project at the time, when I lost Jacoby, and after 6 months of trying to continue making that work, I said to the leadership team, I don't think I can stay on this project. I think what's best for me is that I move on to something else. And they were really understanding of that, and really supportive of that. And so I think having those relationships that have grown over 15 years, yes, has definitely helped.
Was that because they all knew what had happened to you and your family, that it was easier to move to a different, not easier, that's the wrong word, but easier to move to a project team where perhaps they didn't know the.
Yeah, I think it was more that it wasn't necessarily the people on the project. It was more what the project represented, and the fact that I'd been part of that project at that time. And it just felt like a new chapter was needed to be able to allow me to continue to thrive. And yes, having had an open conversation with senior leaders when it happened enabled me to, revert back to that conversation when I needed to. And so again, showing that vulnerability when it's, when it's most needed is actually hugely important later down the line as well.
Did you take enough time off after it happened?
Interesting question. No, I didn't. I went back to work 5 weeks after I gave birth. But that was at my request, because I didn't want to be at home on my own. But it is something I now support other bereaved parents with. I help run a bereavement organisation, and time and time again we see that women go back to work far too early, and actually it comes out later. It came out for me 6 months later at work, and I was signed off for 7 weeks. So it's a really important conversation to have right at the early days. Yeah.
And how about your husband? Because I can, from a woman's point of view, you're pregnant, you have a baby, a terrible tragedy happens. There's a physical change in you.
Yeah.
How did your husband cope with it?
He also found it really, really difficult. Still finds it really, really difficult.
Course.
I mean, we're very blessed to have a 3-year-old little boy running around now, which is lovely. That also had its challenges. He was born via surrogacy, so lots to add into the mix there. But yeah, no, he found it difficult. And I think actually there is still the stereotype around men not having open conversations at work. And, his coping mechanism was also to go back to work, to bring a level of normality back. And if people would ask him how he was always fine. So yeah, I think opening up the dialogue around, the wider well-being conversation and mental health at work is hugely important for both men and women.
Do you think that hasn't had an effect on your view on work-life balance now? This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. JAC have been delivering stunning offices, providing expert advice, honest leadership, and a can-do attitude since 1979. Project management, cost consultancy, and contract administration for office fit-out and relocation projects. JAC creates spaces where people and businesses can thrive. You can find out more at jac-group.co.uk. Do you think that hasn't had an effect on your view on work-life balance now?
I think it has. I think being a full-time working mum, I think you constantly are in a state of guilt for not doing something quite well enough. But I think it's made me appreciate the time I have with Louis, our 3-year-old, and trying to always strive for being a role model for him as a working mum. And being a woman who wants to make a difference in this industry, but also spending enough time with him so that he gets the nurture and love that he needs. So I think it's a constant battle of trying to get that right. But yes, it's probably changed how I approach things. Yeah.
I love that bit about being a role model. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
I think it's important. Sometimes we talk about being role models to other women. I actually think it's so important to be role models to the next generation of men as well, because they're the ones ultimately they're going to really help change this and be allies in that transition. And I really want to make sure that my little boy grows into someone who supports his future partner and enables their career to flourish as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I often say to my little boy, I like going to work.
Yeah.
I love going to work. I love my job.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great. You've turned down a recent opportunity. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I was asked to, apply for another role, a more senior role, and I made quite a difficult decision, probably the first time I've ever in my career said no to something. And that was because not only have I only been in my current post for 1.5 years, and really want to see that through and get through, our strategic cycle, make sure that we deliver on all the commitments that we've set and drive that strategy forward. But also in recognition that right now, having the balance that I do have between work and home is really, really important. And I think what's quite interesting recently is that I've heard a lot of women say, well, as you get more senior, it gets easier and you've got more time to, enable that balance. I've not personally found that. And that might be my approach to leadership and work and wanting to give my all. But I knew that if I went for this next opportunity, it would be even more time away from my son and family, and even more commitment to work, which at the moment I don't feel like I give any more of myself than I already do. So it was a really difficult decision, really hard decision, but an important one to reflect on, and also to recognise that it doesn't stop me doing anything in the future. This is just what's right for me right now.
Yeah. How did you said a difficult decision. How did you make that decision? Was it a pros and cons list? Like, I'm always interested in how people make those important life decisions.
Normally for me, it would be a pros and cons list, for sure. I'm definitely a list person. I list in all aspects of my life. This one was actually gut feel.
Okay.
This one was, I don't know if I just don't know how I would be able to do any more than I am right now. Giving everything that I do to my work, my charity work, my friends, my family, and my son. I just couldn't see how I could make more room
So did you know and then make a list anyway, just to make sure that your gut instinct was right? Or did you just go,
Yes,
you
of
did?
course,
Okay,
yes.
You were named NCE Graduate of the Year in 2011, a recognition very early in your career. Can you tell me a bit about that award? What does it mean?
So at that time, it was actually one of my managers that put me forward for it. Again, a great example of a role model trying to inspire the next generation. And we were a smaller business then, so I invited our CEO to come along to the awards ceremony, and that's how I got to know Mark.
Yeah.
So
Great bit of networking there.
yeah,
Well done.
a little bit ballsy there, but why not? And it was really recognition for what you'd done over the course of your first year, how you'd made an impact on the industry, and a lot of it was about the charity work at that point. But what I hadn't fully appreciated was the way it would become a door opener, and it enabled me to not just network, within WSP, but also within the industry. And it gave me access to my first role on an external board, which was the Green Construction Board at the time, and a way of giving back pretty early on in my career. And since then, that has then led to other opportunities, like working on the Major Projects Association Board alongside Sir Tim Lawrence, learning a huge amount from him, trying to drive the sustainability agenda in that forum as well. So that was an indirect and hugely positive, result of that award.
What did it feel like to have your voice heard, on those boards so early?
I think because I was there to represent the next generation, it wasn't too overwhelming at that point, because really they were asking what people of my generation thought about X, Y, and Z, and how we could get involved in making a difference. But it definitely felt empowering that people were listening, and that actually the recognition for the next generation, the impact and responsibility that we have, was recognised.
So you've mentioned Mark. Anybody else who stands out as an unexpected mentor?
I've had quite a few, and interestingly, all of them male, which has been amazing. I have Adrian Tooth, who is the chap I shadowed at London Bridge Station redevelopment for that 6 months. Someone I still go to for key advice. He is our guru in major project delivery. And then also a chap called Bill Price, who is one of our strategic growth leads. And he really helped me understand how to put myself in the shoes of the client and really focus on building client relationships from the ground up. Getting to know them on a personal level, investing in time with them, understanding what their drivers, what their needs were, and how we could become their trusted advisor. And, his approach has stuck with me my entire career as well.
Apart from the London Bridge Station, which you've mentioned, is there one project where there was a sliding door moment where everything changed for you?
I think not necessarily specifically a project outside of London Bridge, but probably a transition. So I was asked, after I'd worked on HS2, which was my last big major project, because I'd started to specialise in leading big multi-disc complex teams on major projects. I was looking for something a bit different, and again Mark said, we've actually got an opportunity, we'd like you to lead the industry business. And industry for us at WSP is pharmaceuticals, chemicals, advanced manufacturing. So completely outside of my comfort zone, something I'd never done before. And it was a team of 100 with specialist skills in process engineering. And I had to fully immerse myself in the market, the clients, the projects, what the trends were, understanding the funding models. And it was a real rapid learning curve over about 6 months to really be able to then lead that team. So that was probably, after London Bridge Station, probably the next big transition, I would say, in my career. Yeah.
Yeah. And you developed WSP's net zero operations by 2025 strategy.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So that was really about walking the talk. So, we are really passionate about driving net zero across across the projects that we work on for our clients. And at the time, when we made that commitment, it was about making sure that in our own operations, we would become net zero as well. So looking at things, for example, like getting our people to question whether they should get the train or whether they should fly to client and project meetings. So introducing a carbon levy of £200 every time they fly, just to reinstate the fact that they are adding a significant amount of carbon, and really trying to change the culture of how our people were operating at that level. So yeah, that was a really exciting initiative to be part of, and obviously we've now achieved that. So
WSP have a 50-50 graduate intake, I understand. But you've said it will be a slow burn to see, equal gender at the same at the leadership level. What do you think needs to happen to speed that up?
So I think part of the challenge is probably actually, women at my point in their career, in their lives, where you're juggling being a mum to a young child and, a senior role that requires a lot from you, but also a lot of physical contact time with people, with projects, with clients. I'm in a different part of the country every week. I have no routine. I have a very flexible nanny who enables me to, do that job alongside my husband's career. I actually think basics like that are still really challenging. I will always be default parent naturally. That's not the case in every family dynamic, but that is a big challenge. And so if I want to continue with my career at this level, I've got to have a support network and, plans in place every week to enable that. That's just one example of some of the barriers to seeing more and more women at our level. I think others are that the next generation is very much interested in trying lots of different things. So they don't necessarily stick at the same career like, we used to or we've done. 5-10 years in, they want to try something different, and that means actually it might take them longer to get to some of the senior levels. So I think there's a handful of different reasons why, and I think we're still coming to terms and understanding what those are. I think flexible working and flexible approaches to how people demonstrate their output is a huge part of that.
You often return to your school to talk to students, don't you? Why do you think it's important for young women and young men to see you standing there?
I think while I'm, still at a level where they can relate to me, I think there'll come a point where I reach an age where they won't be able to relate to me anymore. But while I'm still at that point,
you're a long way off. Yeah, don't worry.
I think it's important for them to see that, if you can see what you can be, there's the opportunity to go ahead and do that. And I think we don't see that enough in schools. I think going back in schools and just demonstrating that actually some of the perceptions around our industry aren't real. I'm not in hard hat and muddy boots the majority of my career. I've been in offices and, as we say, with clients, with architects, with other engineering disciplines, brainstorming things out on the table, or with digital assets, not necessarily doing that stereotypical muddy boots job, but that's what a lot of the next generation still think we do. And so I think it's really important to break down some of those perceptions.
Do you think the industry is ready to fully support women?
Yes, I do. I just think we need some of the infrastructure that enables that. And I don't think that's just our industry. I think that's society generally.
I agree. You've said you love the people side of leadership, strategy, clients, culture, even if it means moving away from pure engineering. How did you know that was where your strengths lay?
I think probably the level of frustration I would experience in doing some of the calculations day to day and not getting them right every time is probably where I learned that firsthand. And I started to get more recognition for doing things like presentations and being taken to client meetings and engaging with people on that level. I started to realise that was something I was probably better at than the technical.
Yeah. What's a failure or setback that felt devastating at the time but turned out to be a hidden gift?
I would say that the the biggest impact on something that I had failed on was actually my chartership. So I failed first time round on my chartership, and that was a real blow. That felt like I'd, really let people down, actually. The reality was I went for it too early. Always pushing myself, always being pushed by others, and I didn't listen to my inner gut that I just wasn't quite ready. I was also juggling, a big project on site at the time. But yeah, it was a real blow. But it's actually a great it's a great thing that I come back to when I'm speaking to the next generation about make sure you feel ready to do this. Don't go at someone else's pace, go at your own pace. And make sure you feel prepared, always prepare. And so whether it's a presentation, whether it's a bid, or, whether it's doing a podcast, I always make sure I'm prepared. And feel ready for what might be ahead.
Do you think it's important to be chartered?
I think it's important for those that on a delivery and project level need to demonstrate their capability. Yes. I also think it does help with career progression because it's an instant recognition for those skills. So I'm a real advocate for it. It's not for everybody, and we're an industry that's growing in a real diversity of skill sets. I mean, we've employed our first gamer at WSP so that we can have more of that visual approach to how we engage with the public, for example. So there are lots of different skills coming to play, but for our technical experts, chartership's really important. Yeah.
Do you think it's more important for a woman to be chartered?
Oh, that's an interesting question. The reason I say that is I've recently become a fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we don't have many female fellows, and we're trying to understand why. And largely that's because it's seen as quite difficult to achieve that. Whereas the reality is it's not. You're just demonstrating what you've done.
What's the split for chartered?
What, in terms of male and female?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually. I don't know the full split. I would need to check on the IC's website, but that aspect is definitely improving.
Okay.
Where we get to that senior fellow level, it's still pretty low. So there's still that blocker of people feeling like it's in the too difficult box, and you've got to be male, pale, and stale to get to that level.
So do you think it's important for women to be chartered?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, in a similar way to men. Yeah.
Same, or do you think there's more?
I think it helps you feel more confident.
Okay, so it's more personal confidence rather than outside looking in.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the hardest lesson you've learned as a leader, and how did you come back from it?
Oh, that's a good question. Hardest lesson, I think possibly probably coming back to the people element. I think making assumptions is something that we do as engineers quite a lot, because typically it's black or white, right or wrong. And actually, I think if you make assumptions about people and why they've approached things in a certain way, or why they might find something a bit more challenging, actually that can be to your own detriment. And I think actually fully understanding someone's perception, someone's viewpoint, before launching in and giving your own, I think is really important. And so I think being an active listener is probably something I strive to do a lot more now in a leadership role than I've ever done in my earlier career.
Can you talk to me about Lego, please?
Lego. So as part of my piece around trying to inspire the next generation, I was on the Institution of Civil Engineers panel for education, and we had this idea that, let's inspire the next generation in a slightly different way. So we went into and entered the Guinness World Record for the longest spanning Lego bridge.
Wow.
And it was really good fun. It was really fun. I was asked to present it, and we created a great video. We had a full day out experiencing it. The Lego bridge went on tour around the UK.
How long was the Lego bridge?
16 metres.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It was
That's
really good
amazing.
fun.
What was the
And
previous world record
I
that you
don't
had
know
to beat?
actually. I don't know if there even was one.
Okay.
It was it was a very easy win in that regard. But it
Doesn't
took
sound that easy.
it took a lot of effort from the guys who were actually putting it all together and manufacturing the different parts. But I was just in awe to be able to be part of it, and also to get a mini me in Lego immortalised.
Amazing.
Claire in Lego was really quite fun. So
When was this?
this was probably about 10 years ago now.
Okay, so you're forever 10 years younger than you are now. Amazing. I love that. What do those kind of playful moments mean to you regarding work?
Well, it just reminds me that, we all come to work to enjoy what we do, and actually having fun is so important in our day to day. And that piece around bringing, our full selves to work. We are at work so much of the time. It's so important to enjoy what we do and who we spend our time with. So yeah, it's really nice to have those moments and to be able to look back on them as well.
Yeah. You're a mentor. What's one story you've heard from someone you've mentored that stayed with you?
I think one story that probably hit me to the core and it made me feel as though we really do need to make some change was recently one of my mentees had, who doesn't work at WSP, had a doctor's appointment for her child, and asked if she could leave early to go and sort that out, and that was very much frowned upon. So I think, having that kind of rapport with your leadership and understanding and flexibility, I was really surprised that was still happening actually in our industry.
If you could distill one piece of advice you wish you'd known earlier, what would it be?
I think following your passion. Yeah. So I know that sounds very cliche, but if we look, if I look back at all of the different junctures in my career where there's been a sliding doors moment or something that's presented itself as an opportunity, it's where I've outwardly demonstrated what I'm passionate about, what drives me, what I'm interested in. And people can see that and people will resonate with that because they know that it's earnest, it's real.
Yeah. Do you say you're ambitious?
Yes.
What does ambition look like?
Wanting to be the best version of myself, and always wanting to do better, and driving to excellence, I guess.
Yeah. What are you a beginner at right now?
Right now, I'm learning to garden. I'm learning to do gardening.
Okay.
First garden only probably 5 years ago, and it's just a really nice way to take my head out of the work game.
Yep. Yeah. Looking back, what's the achievement you're proudest of?
Across all aspects of life?
Everything.
Probably my little boy, Louis.
If you could sit with yourself, maybe at school or on that trip to Tanzania, what would you tell her?
I would say that you're going to make a difference. You will be able to, through small, tangible changes, make a difference, and one person can make a difference. Yeah.
What changes in engineering or construction excite you the most?
I think the shift towards digitization, how we're going to embrace AI. It's a really hot topic, but how are we actually doing it? And some of the work we're doing around kit of parts, sub-assemblies, reducing transmission, of getting components to site much more quickly, effectively, cheaper. That aspect, I think, is going to completely transform our industry in terms of how we deliver projects.
How's that in progress at the moment?
For us at WSP, it's about actually looking at how we can approach projects differently, how we can use that kit of parts approach to, like I say, get projects to site much more quickly. How can we reduce the construction programme so that in really congested sites in London, you can be in and out really quickly? And how can we focus engineering on a human-centred element where we really make a difference, where we can be really creative and leave all the mundane, repetitive tasks to AI.
So podcast, as you know, is called Places She Shapes. I've got 3 shaping moments questions. The first one is the places. You're in a room with everyone you've ever met, dead or alive, excluding your immediate family. Who would you look for first?
Wow. Probably anyone, absolutely anyone. Who's been in my life or outside of, can I pick anyone?
Someone you've met.
Someone I've met. I'd probably go with my dad at that point. Yeah, in terms of reaching back for, you know, in an engineering space, have I done what I set out to do? You know, was it all worth it? Do you think this is, been a success? Looking to him for that kind of support, and him as a role model has the mentee done what the mentor was hoping for?
Oh, that's nice. So the she question, who's the woman you turn to for advice, and why her?
The woman I turn to for advice really is probably a friend. She sung at our wedding. She is someone who really connects on a personal people level, and is really supportive and understanding. So I can go to her with absolutely anything. And she's outside of the engineering world. She's just someone who I trust with absolutely everything. Yeah.
And the shapes question, how would you shape your ideal day?
My ideal day would be interacting with as many people as I could, on a family level, friendship level, and projects and clients, being immersed in the people that make the difference behind everything that we do day to day.
Amazing. Thank you, Claire, so much. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Places She Shapes podcast here on YouTube, and leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it.
Okay, let's take it from the top.